I'm Gab. He's Don. Yes, that's right. Don Hutchison Juls is on a well-deserved break.
Another one.
Look, I think the man works pretty darn hard. Blue skies over West London. Not really. Not at the Chelsea end right now.
Nope.
After the defeat to City. But we're going to get into that. But what a weekend it was. All the leagues have started up except for the Bundesliga. But, you know, we got a little appetizer from a German Super Cup. We're talking about that. We're talking about Real Madrid, Barcelona, Serie getting underway, Paris Saint-Germain and the kids. Mm-hmm. But let's start at Stamford Bridge because, all right, the champions visit. It's Manchester City. And I think there's legit questions. There's legit questions around City, right? There were legit fears that, all right, De Bruyne expiring contract, Pep expiring contract.
Alvarez moving on.
Alvarez moves on. Rodri, the 115 charges. Mm-hmm. Is this a year where, you know, the gang says, all right, we've had a good run? But no, it looked to me, Don, like nothing changed. Kovacic did his Rodri impression.
Man of the match.
And they look good, despite the fact, by the way, that it wasn't just Rodri wasn't there. Walker was on the bench. Foden was on the bench.
Yeah.
There's just a gulf there, right?
I think the feeling is, Gab, I think we're all probably looking at the outside, and we're all probably looking at Arsenal thinking they're getting stronger, and Arsenal are making ground because
they've added one guy.
Yeah, but I mean,
very handsome Italian guy.
Very handsome.
One guy.
But yeah, this summer, but they've been improving all the time.
Right,
Declan Rice is second year, I know. So like they're getting stronger every year. So City are still the team to beat. So I think our eyes are probably going away from Man City, think, well, Arsenal are getting a little bit closer. At one point last season, Liverpool were 5 points clear, so I've got no idea why people haven't got Liverpool in the conversation. But I would be stunned if Pep goes into this season with just Haaland as a recognised number 9.
Right.
Once Julian Alvarez moves on and that is deal completed, I'd be stunned if it's just Haaland playing every domestic game, every cup game, every Champions League game. He will go and buy another 9. And by the way, the bench yesterday, as you said, Foden, Ake, Grealish, Stones, Walker. I mean, it's Man City's B team on the first game of the season.
We can get into that later, but I think we agree. City were impressive. On the Chelsea end, there are a few surprises. Raheem Sterling, not included, not happy about it.
Rightly so, by the way. Rightly so.
We'll break down. He says he's asking for clarity. He's got 3 years left.
Do you want me to translate all this for you or later?
Translate.
I've got 3 years left on my deal. I'm on £250,000 a week. That's 39 million. Pay me my 39 million and I will leave. But I love the fans and I love the club. And I'm going to say all the right things. But translated, that's what he's saying to the Chelsea board. You owe me close to 40 million. If you pay me, I'll move.
All right. There's a whole ownership, approach, squad management side to Chelsea, which we're going to get into later. I think there's a lot to break down. In terms of what we saw on the pitch, the lineup he put out, I think there were only 2 players over the age of 23, Nkunku and Robert Sanchez, who was poor again. I look at this and say, all right, this is a work in progress, right? For Chelsea to have a player to compete, they need to get the value add of what Maresca can bring. We didn't see that because this is a group of guys who've just really come together. But it does. But I wanted to ask you just tactically, what did you make of Palmer and Nkunku, neither of whom really is a natural winger, kind of shoehorned in the lineup on the wide areas? Obviously, you want them to play because they're good, but they're not wingers.
No. I liken it a little bit to the scenario at Nottingham Forest when they were bringing players in left, right and centre. And to be fair, Chelsea are bringing a better calibre of player. They're also spending a lot of money. But it's very difficult when you've got 3 squads.
Okay, check. It's not what I asked.
What are you asking?
Palmer and Nkunku in wide areas.
Yeah.
Coming inside.
But I mean,
is that
Nkunku,
a solution this year?
No, I'd play Nkunku through the middle. I think he's better than Nicholas Jackson. I think he's better than any forward that they've got, as in number 9. Palmer, I think, is a player that predominantly plays off the right-hand side. So he is a sort of inverted winger, like a sort of Bernardo Silva, Phil Foden type. So he's a maverick where you can more or less just put him on the team sheet. You ask him to do a job. But if you really want to get the best out of him, he's a number 10. But you just look at the shambles that's Chelsea and you go, how are you going to form relationships when you've got a squad of 42 players?
Right, I knew you're going back to this. We're going to beat them later.
I know, but it's
Chelsea about this.
But it's true. That's what transforms onto the pitch.
Positives.
And it's only match day 1, by the way. I'm very loathed always to criticise any team on a win or a loss on match day one because the legs are still heavy, even though fans will think, Don, you're talking rubbish, it's match day one. They're not sharp.
These are very wise words. It is match day one. Let's not get carried away with conclusions. Some positives, too, for Chelsea, Lavia and Colwill. I think...
Not so Enzo.
Not so Enzo. All right, Don, I listed some Chelsea positives because there are Chelsea positives in the performance. Lavia and Colwill. Jackson put himself around. Palmer's good. But for me, it's the construction.
Yeah.
And I think it's going to take Maresca time.
A long time.
To bring any kind of value add to this. You want to talk about Enzo. Well, first of all, I got a text from Mark Ogden. He's like, Enzo captain. That's a shock. And I thought to myself, why is it a shock? Is it a shock because of the Fofana incident? Is it a shock because what?
I mean, to be fair, when you probably got that text from Oggy, he was probably thinking because of the racism incident in the summer, might have been a little bit clumsy from Chelsea. For match day one, you could have just easily, you could have easily give it to someone else just to not have that conversation.
But that's a thing, right? Yeah. The Chelsea team's so young.
Yeah, give it to Raheem Sterling. I know he wasn't in the squad.
I mean, it is one of those, right? Like, I don't have an issue with it if the situation with Fofana and Enzo is cleared up and he's done that. I don't see that. Reece James is the club captain, although
injured again.
Him. Yeah, the vice captain is Chilwell, who may not be around. It's a whole other issue. That's another thing they have to show up. But for me, like, we make too big a deal out of it. On the pitch, his performance, he looked like a very frustrated guy.
Enzo.
Yeah. And he looked...
I'm always critical when I see Bruno Fernandes at Man United throw his arms up in the air and blame everyone else. Enzo Fernandez is now starting to do the same thing. And let me tell you, Gab, players in the Chelsea team will absolutely hate him for it. Because he's more or less saying, I'm too good for this. Like, why are you not making runs? Like, I'm on another level to use lots, so I'm throwing my hands in the air. So it's a very arrogant thing to do for someone that's been through the door 5 minutes. And by the way, not convincing. I watched every Chelsea pre-season game, and he weren't great. For someone that cost 100 million, and maybe the fee's the fee, and it is whatever it is. But this guy's a World Cup winner, and he's gone into Chelsea. You expect a lot more, and you expect him to be sort of, even if he hasn't got the armband, captain material. Start organising, start playing for the team. Whereas I think he's starting to look a little bit selfish. And I see him disappearing a lot in games. For a guy that's cost an awful lot of money, with a big reputation, he's not really contributing a lot.
I'm also not sure that that's his best position either. I don't.
Number 10 is not. No,
go with a more traditional 4-3-3.
Yeah.
Let him get forward.
But just in general, you can have a good attitude on the pitch. It doesn't matter what position you're playing in. Your body language can look good, and it can look really bad.
I don't think Erling Haaland is a big fan of Enzo either, judging, or Cucurella for that matter. It's really, you just say out Haaland. And Haaland, by the way, like, I thought that goal was, a bit of luck with Bernardo Silva, but then maybe it wasn't luck. Maybe Bernardo really meant that.
But the touch was good. But the finish was calm. The finish was someone of...
But what gets me is, you often talk about how a footballer's brain is like a computer, right?
Yeah.
To be able to, you need to have adrenaline, physicality to be able to shake off Fofana and Cucurella the way he did, right?
Yeah.
So you're sort of pounding through there, and then in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden everything's calm.
Yeah. And
you kind of dink it over Sanchez. I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
And that's why it shows you his mentality, because we always talk about Erling Haaland. It's a theme that happens every week. Hardly touched the ball. Only had about 10 touches, but every time he gets in front of goal, he's got different types of finishes. It's almost like when you're going through, what you've got to try and decide when you're going through 1v1 is, in your Rolodex of finishes, what's the easiest finish that I want to go for? What's the best finish I can go for? And once you see Sanchez diving along the floor, the easiest finish, if you can try and wrap your Rolodex and go through a million finishes in your head, was the dink. So to have that calmness under pressure...
Right.
So, mate, 100 appearances, 91 goals. The numbers speak for themselves.
Just like Nico Jackson, that calmness under pressure. By the way, that finish with Jackson, where he shot it kind of directly at Ederson. Again, is that something that's going to be fixed with age?
You'd like to think so. I mean,
you're 2 feet away from him. I know he's got a large body, but just put it anywhere not other than central, and that could have turned the game.
Yeah, it could have. I mean, I had the feeling when I was watching the game, Chelsea had a good probably 15 minutes in the second half, but I was sitting watching the game and I said to my pal, I went, City will score again. Because City played the game. City played the game like it was the first day of the season. A lot of their first team players were on the pitch. A lot of the first team players that started or were on the pitch, Phil Foden's probably, I think he came in at half time, but I'm not sure if he started too many games in pre-season. I don't think he did. So when you're trying to evaluate and what you're watching a team like City and a lot of Premier League teams because it's the first game, is when you keep hold of the ball, you're keeping it because you're a little bit tired and you're not quite sharp. It's when you're sharp, you might spin in behind, like the Salah second goal, you start running that way. When you first game in, you think, well, I can't do 60-yard runs. So everything comes to feet and then the patterns of play can sort of link up. They can be a little bit unrealistic because sometimes the best thing to do is run off the ball. So from City's point of view, away from home, up against a potentially difficult opponent, you stick 3 points on the board. A lot of the first team players, as we mentioned, sitting on the bench. Job done.
Final point on City. You talked about with Alvarez gone, they need another center forward.
Yeah. I think it'll be someone like a South American, like an Alvarez. It'll be someone that we've not particularly heard of. As in it won't be. No, as in it won't be an Ollie Watkins. It won't be an Ivan Toney. It'll be someone that's
a South American we haven't heard.
No, well, no.
I don't know how you put that.
No, well, I did because you know what I mean. It might be someone a little bit left field where you're going to have to convince someone to sit on the bench behind Haaland.
Oh, that's a really tough ask.
Well,
I don't know. I wondered about sort of the profile of player, and do you get somebody who can do Haaland type things, or do you get a
no? I think it'll be different. It'll be an Alvarez. It'll be someone that's willing to have a season under Pep, to understand that he's going to play behind in terms of sitting on the bench behind Haaland. Someone that when's needed in the Carabao Cup and some domestic games he'll play, but not the very biggest of games because Haaland can't play 65 games a season across all competitions as a number 9. Every minute he can't.
I agree with you. I think that's something that should be that will be a priority for him. It would be weird. I mean, Pep likes to do unusual things, right? Yeah. We've seen that, and so maybe he won't do it.
And he's got a bit of money to play with, by the way, because 95 million for Alvarez? I mean, that is some fee.
I think it's
add-ons, but still.
I think it's substantially less than that. Actually, I think it's more like 65, and I think.
Oh, I don't think it is. Might be wrong.
Well, a base payment, and plus it's Atleti, so who knows? But whatever. Sorry, I'm being unkind there. We kid because we love. No, I completely agree with you. I think it's an imperative. Because what you don't want to do is look, they can beat you. They can play Foden at center forward. They can play De Bruyne at center. They can beat you different ways, right?
Yeah.
But
you can't afford a Haaland.
You don't want to have a situation where Haaland is out
for a month,
and then you have and then you have to change everything about the way the team play, right?
Yeah.
So I like the other option. You guys can fill in, but you should have a guy fill in who can make comparable runs, who can do some of the same thing. Doesn't need to be a 6'5" Haaland.
I mean, he's won the league before without a recognised striker. Won the league with a false 9, didn't he, Pep? But the season after he went and bought Haaland.
So but that was Raheem Sterling.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
But that's different.
Yeah, but so to your point, he can do the Phil Foden, De Bruyne, false 9. Bernardo Silva,
but just
whatever.
At this stage, Bernardo Silva and De Bruyne are older. Foden's kind of established in a different role. So I think somebody.
That's why I think he'll buy. Yeah, I think he'll buy.
I'd be very surprised if it doesn't happen. But then, like I said, Pep's unconventional. Moving to Chelsea, and all right.
Where do we start here?
Okay, let's start very, very simply, right? There is one thing is a function of another, right? The fact that they have 42 players under contract,
42.
Whatever. And look, when we say that, some ways we're kind of unkind because the list includes, seventh choice keeper, who's a kid, who is going to move on, whatever, right?
Doesn't matter. Still 42, and they've got 7 goalkeepers.
And the list includes people who won't be back, like Lukaku. The reason we're in this situation, and I've touched upon this before, is a business stroke sporting model that Chelsea have, where essentially they view these players as assets. It's a financialization of football, and they're going to balance the books by acquiring all the best young assets around, or as many as they can.
I'm not sure the best.
Well, if you speak to scouts and nerds really follow this stuff, they've gotten an incredible proportion of the guys everybody wanted. I mean, these people aren't even here yet, like Kendry Pies or not. They may or may not work out, but this is what they've done, right? And then they don't pay them a lot of money. They will pay high fees for them. And then they're going to balance it out by letting others go because you can't go into the season with 42 players or even 30 players, right? Yeah. What I struggle with is the execution of this model. In other words, Ben Chilwell now is somebody who's supposedly surplus to requirements. Yeah. Fine, right?
Yeah.
But if this comes out now with 10 days left in the window,
but also,
or if you wait on Lukaku, right? So if you go,
but it's a terrible business model because you're saying all of a sudden Ben Chilwell's for sale, and someone will go, oh, okay, well I'll give you 1 million then because I know you're desperate to sell him.
But that's what I mean. They got to the situation. Whereas Raheem Sterling, for example, right? Yeah. Raheem Sterling, you sort of summed up what he came out with. I don't disagree. You can debate going on, whatever. He makes a ton of money. It makes sense for Chelsea to move him on, right? Because they need to get within profit and sustainability rules.
That's their problem, by the way.
That's fine. If you prepare the groundwork in April, May, and you say, Raheem, Poch is going. We're going to get Maresca in. You don't fit our business model anymore.
Yeah.
Let's try to quietly find you a home because you're still a good player, and find an arrangement where we don't look desperate to sell.
Yeah.
So that we can get decent money back, but we're in a position where
you have the conversation, Gab. If you owe the player 39 million, you can have a conversation. You could start by saying the handshake, and we'll move on in good terms, and we'll say nice things about you. Likewise.
And we'll try to get a reasonable fee.
And by the way, we'll give you £20 million.
Well, no,
now he might say, well, all right, I want 30. So there's a middle ground
you're
somewhere.
Talking about releasing him. That's completely different. I think you could have moved.
But who's going to buy him when he's on 250 a week?
Because he signs a longer term contract. Because the way
he's got 3 years left.
But this is the skill, right? If you approach it in the right way, look, nobody's going back in time and saying this was a good signing. This made a lot of sense, right? But you have to approach it in some ways in the right way so that you can minimize your risk to you, right? And you say, look, Raheem, you can go back. You have a full preseason. There was a World Cup in 2026. Find you the right club. Guy you want to work with. Where do you want to go? Can we talk to them? The guy's got ambition. He's made a ton of money already. He's got 3 years left. Maybe he takes a pay cut, but in exchange for a 5-year contract.
No, it's Chelsea's problem. I've been in Raheem Sterling's shoes.
It's not. Hang on.
Don,
let me finish on this.
Because I want to go back to pre-season.
No, let me finish on this one, right? It's not Chelsea's problem.
It is Chelsea's problem.
It's Raheem Sterling's.
Chelsea was stupid enough to put him on £250,000 a week, and he's got 3 years left.
Okay.
It's Chelsea's
problem.
All
I'm saying is, right, I agree. The deal was a bad one. But what I'm saying is, there was a way to mitigate it if you had been competent in handling the situation, handling Ben Chilwell, handling many of these situations. Not 3 years ago. Anybody can time travel and make a different decision. But I'm saying going back to May, you approach the window differently, and you speak to these people and their agents, and you have good relationships with them.
I agree with that, yeah.
How can we have the best solution?
Yes.
Because if the solution ends up being Raheem Sterling stays at Chelsea for another 6 months and never plays, that's not good for Raheem Sterling either. No. So you could have come up with a mutually beneficial thing that would have mitigated. Now you're totally up against the wall.
I agree.
And the guy makes an absolute mint. You'll probably end up loaning. It'll be a Lukaku situation.
You'll be paying his wages somewhere. Chelsea.
Exactly.
But what I want to go back to is the pre-season that Raheem Sterling had. And Raheem Sterling had a very good pre-season. And when a player like Raheem Sterling comes out with a statement, you've got to try and look at the things that he hasn't said. And I talked about the 39 million and how much he's owed, and that's Chelsea's problem. If they want to get rid, they've got to pay him off. But when you're someone like Raheem Sterling, because I've been there, and you look at the pre-season that he's had, he's thinking, I've had a better pre-season than Madueke. I've had a better pre-season than Mykhailo Mudryk. So the chances are, on match day 1 against my former club, there's every chance the pre-season that I've had. But hang on, I'm going to be in the squad.
Yeah, okay,
he didn't even make the squad.
But this is where the people who look after Raheem Sterling need to do their job well as too.
They've done their job.
And say, Raheem, no. Raheem,
no,
these guys want you out.
Read between the lines.
Raheem,
the statement that they've made.
I don't care about their statement. I'm talking about what they say to Raheem, not what they say to the Daily Mail.
You don't know what they've said to Raheem. I know the conversation. So since
you know the conversation, If Raheem Sterling thought, oh, look, I had a better preseason than Madueke.
No, I know the conversation.
I'll be in the team.
No, I know the conversation. I do know the conversation.
You don't fit the business model.
The conversation between Raheem Sterling and his camp is we are going to make a statement, and Raheem Sterling's complicit in this because we're going to put it back onto Chelsea because they're going to try and pay us up. So we've got to say we love the club, we love the fans.
I get all that.
Right?
I get all that. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying
all of that's been said a million times.
You said earlier, Sterling had a great preseason.
He did.
And so on, so he would have expected to be in the side.
Yes, 100%.
Okay. If he expected to be in the side...
That's why he's fuming, because he wasn't.
Okay. Then either his agents...
It's got nothing to do with his agents.
Of course they have.
It's Chelsea trying to force him out the club, Gab.
No,
it's a standard move. It is, Gab. You don't... I've been there. Gab.
No, Don.
It's a standard move.
Listening.
I am listening.
Don, you're not listening.
They've done it to Conor Gallagher. They've done it to Trevor Chalobah.
Don, you're not listening. Listen to me one second.
Go on.
Chalobah, especially Chalobah, Gallagher, Sterling, all these people would have known, should have known, that it doesn't matter what they do in preseason, especially Sterling. Chelsea, he doesn't fit their business model anymore. They cannot afford to keep him.
So like you said, why didn't they have that conversation 3 months ago? That's what should have happened.
Yes. Again, maybe they did. Look, maybe they did. But if Sterling really went into it and saying like, oh, look, the gaffer's giving me a chance and I play better than these guys, I'll be in the starting. It's like, the reality is, dude, pick up a freaking newspaper once in a while. Look at Chelsea's books. Talk to your agents whose job it is to do this. And I think the agents did tell him. And I don't think Sterling was under any illusion. I think Sterling knew it was going to be this. I think he was disappointed because he probably looked Maresca in the eye and said, and Maresca, poor guy.
But what did Maresca say at the weekend? He said it was a technical decision. Rubbish.
Yeah, whatever.
Rubbish.
Yeah, okay. But unfortunately, that's part of coach's job.
Maresca's just batting it off. Because Maresca wants no part of the conversation. He's just saying...
Maresca's inherited this mess.
That's what I'm saying. My sporting directors will take care of that.
Exactly.
So what he said is just...
But I'm saying is, I don't believe that Sterling all of a sudden was shocked by this. They knew this was coming.
I would tend to disagree because you wouldn't play the minutes that you played in pre-season. If you knew that you were going to go in at the first couple of games of the season not starting, the likelihood is the manager's not going to play you in pre-season. The message would be given in pre-season when you sat on the bench. When you're in America and you're sat on the bench and the bench and the bench and the bench, you go, actually, I've got no plans here. When you're starting and you're playing well, you think, I've got a chance here.
Unless, Don, you want to pretend that Sterling's still a valued asset so that you can get a good transfer fee for him.
But we're concentrating on Raheem Sterling. This is just not a one-player move. They're doing it with Trevor Chalobah. They're doing it with Conor Gallagher. They're doing it with Ben Chilwell.
They're doing it with your pal Lukaku, too.
They're doing it because they're desperate to get money through the door. They're desperate to sell players because they've got 42 players.
I have no idea how this goes, how this is going to end up. I really don't. I have no idea how they're going to square the books.
I've got every idea how it'll end up.
What do you think's going to happen?
Well, they'll end up paying the players a large chunk to go. So if Raheem Sterling,
which means if that happens, they're going to be screwed with PSR at least for this window.
No. They'll sell the players for a cheaper amount, but they'll also pay them off.
Right.
So instead
which
of giving
Raheem
Sterling,
screwed with PSR this window.
It's PSR's rubbish anyway. I can't stand the thing, and that's what's got Chelsea in a mess.
What do you mean?
It's got Aston Villa in a mess.
No.
It's got Newcastle in a mess.
I think what's really important for credibility, for transparency, is that if they can't make this work PSR wise, and right now I don't see how they can, but maybe they can. Maybe something.
Do you know what I half love?
Hang on, let me finish for a second. Right, is that they apply the rules on Chelsea, just like they did last year on Everton, and on Nottingham Forest. It's really, really important that the Premier League have the cojones to do this, because I cannot have a situation where I'm telling you what the rules are, I'm speaking to you in real time, I'm talking to you about the hotels and this and that. And then you go and you spend 50 million or whatever it is on Pedro Neto, right? I cannot have that situation where I punish these other clubs.
Correct.
So I'll be really curious to see where this goes if they don't balance it.
I would half love Trevor Chalobah, Conor Gallagher, Ben Chilwell to sit and have a cup of coffee and go, I ain't going. It's got nothing to do with us, this. Right? I'm not going to make them upstairs happy because they've got themselves in a hole. I am staying here, going to enjoy my football, and I'm going to get paid. And everything that's going on with PSR and the football club Chelsea has nothing to do with us. I'd half love that conversation because I know what players are like inside the dressing room. And the ones I feel sorry for are the Chelsea fans. I heard Chelsea fans before, but more so after the game. And yeah, we're a little bit emotional after the game, I get it. But I listened to what they said. And they said, we can't get a grasp on our football club. You know, normally at Stamford Bridge, the atmosphere's rocking, it's buzzing. It was dead. The atmosphere was dead. The Chelsea fans...
What do you expect with those people in charge?
But no. But Gab, my point is, it doesn't matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter what players are playing in a Chelsea shirt. The first day of the season at Stamford Bridge or anywhere, you want to have an affinity. You want to have a pull with your team. You want to try and latch onto something. It was dead. It was quiet. And the Chelsea fans at the minute are going, we haven't got a clue what's going on with our team. And the other thing, quickly, what I want to say is the job of a manager, technical director, whoever, when you're buying players, number one rule, you've got to buy better than what you've got. You cannot tell me that Badger Shields is a better defender than Trevor Chalobah. Impossible. Chalobah played the last 6 or 7 games yet in the season. Chelsea never lost a game. You cannot tell me that people like Lavia or Dewsbury Hall are better players than Conor Gallagher. And the list goes on and on and on. So I've got no idea what they're buying.
I think Lavia, if he stays fit, if he lives up to his potential, is a better player. Dewsbury Hall is probably a cheaper player than...
But not a better player.
Than what they think Conor Gallagher, what they need to pay him if they extend his contract. So I could see the logic in that one. It's a tough one. And I think...
Madueke got bought about a year ago. He's up for sale again. Because they've got other wide players in. It's a mess, Gab. It's a mess. We'll be monitoring the situation. But what's pretty obvious too, and which complicates everything for Boli and Bedadik Bali and Feliciano and the rest of the gang, is that they're succeeding an owner who was not just very successful, but insanely popular, leaving aside all the political stuff that came back with it, right? And that's why when things go badly, who, by the way, bought legendary players for that football club.
People still sing Roman Abramovich's name. All right, enough Chelsea, enough City. How about some quick hits instead?
Let's do it.
Arsenal are most people's main contenders for the Premier League, and they beat Wolves 2-0.
They did.
How'd they look, Don?
They looked really good. Quite noticeable that when Thomas Partey was playing in that number 6 role, that Declan Rice was getting forward a lot more. But Saka was man of the match by a million miles. I love watching this kid. I mean, the way Bukayo Saka plays, he, not at the weekend against Wolves, but generally he gets kicked from pillar to post off fullbacks. He's hard as nails. He's durable. He's got great skill. The cross that he put in was a peach, and if anyone ever wants to try and understand how good of a cross is, he put it in an area where he tempted Jose Sarr to come off his line. In the end, the goalkeeper was in no man's land, and Kai Havertz got the goal. But they look pretty impressive. Clean sheet, Saliba, Gabriel, Zinchenko played instead of Calafiori. Timber got some minutes. I think we're pretty
less
good.
said about Timber, the better. But if they get Mourinho in, I think that moves them a little bit closer.
Yeah.
Just because they need a body in front of the back four. It can't just be Partey and George.
Well, Vieira's still there, who I'm not a massive fan of, but
you're getting him muddled with the other Vieira who used to play for Arsenal.
Gab, Barca win. They beat Valencia 2-1 with 2 debutants named Mark in midfield, both making their top flight debuts. Were you expecting this?
I was not expecting to see them, but then again, everybody's out between the players who are injured, De Jong and Gavi, the guys they can't register yet for the well-known financial issues. Pedri half fit on the bench. I thought they did well. I thought Barcelona really, really struggled. I thought in the first half, Valencia could have scored more. But then they equalized with Lewandowski and then went ahead. And in the second half, I thought Barca played much better. Like, I'm not going to judge Flick's work when you've got these 2 guys in there who, they look good. Yeah. They look ready. They look like they understand the system. But, they are just kids. By the way, we'll be talking about Gundogan later. I think they were definitely expecting him to be there, and that kind of left them in the lurch when they weren't there. Also, Rafinha, not number 10.
Yeah.
Inter held a 2-2 draw by Genoa. Don, Thuram looked good, but these mistakes from the 2 Jans were self-inflicted. Bissek and Sommer.
Yeah, Sommer, when it hit the crossbar, strange one really, because he tried to get the flight of the ball, and once he backed off underneath the crossbar, he couldn't actually see the ball anymore, and then it bounced off the bar, and they got a tap in Genoa. But Galini was brilliant in goal for them. But you're right, Thuram was probably the star of the show because he was really sharp and got a couple of goals. And Bissek, who I'm a massive fan of, committed a really naive handball, lost the flight of it and panicked instead of just letting it go or trying to move his shoulder or his head towards the ball, just panicked, and as the ball came over, definite handball. So a good spot by the referee. But yeah, I think late goals might be the theme across Serie A and across some leagues this season because of the first game of the season.
Yeah, I don't think Inter were as bad as some suggest.
I thought they were good.
I can deal with individual errors, and I'm really encouraged by Thuram, and more to come from Lautaro. He looks really tired, but he's had a long summer.
Back on Friday, Gab, how did the first game post-Mbappe era go for Luis Enrique in Paris Saint-Germain?
Okay, I love Luis Enrique because Lucho is the guy who's like, I'm going to be different from everybody else. And what does he do? He's got all these players. Now, admittedly, a lot of them, obviously played in the Euros or tired or the Copa America. But man, he leaves out Marquinhos, Ousmane Dembele, Barcola, John Neves, Milan Skriniar. He puts out the youngest team in the history of French football, which I thought was pretty amazing.
That is amazing.
And they're away to Le Havre, and guess what? It's 1-1 with like deep into the second half. They're not getting it done.
Come on, off the bench.
Sends on the cavalry. They end up winning 4-1. Bad injury for Gonzalo Ramos, which we're going to talk about later. I don't know. That's Lucho being Lucho. Like, let me be different.
Yeah, amazing. Absolutely amazing.
Don, we're not done. More quick hits coming your way. Ipswich Town put up a good fight in the first half, but then Liverpool cycled through the gears and went away 2-0 in Arne Slot's first game. Well, Don, what did you make of it? And how about Ryan Gravenberch's audition in defensive midfield?
He played better second half. I think Arne Slot said that. He said, what you're judging this on, the first half or the second? Because the first half was a pretty predictable game. When you're playing at 12:30 away from home on the opening day of the season against a team that's just come up, you're going to have to win a few battles. You're going to have to win a few wars. And Ipswich pressed Liverpool hard. They closed them down. They used the atmosphere. Then Liverpool's quality in the second half told. Gravenberch played as a number 6 alongside McAllister. And Szoboszlai played as a 10, which was something different. I would have thought McAllister would have been a better number 10 than Szoboszlai. But second half, they played better. Trent played a ball into Salah for the second goal that I don't think any other fullback on this earth can play. So second half, Liverpool was so much better. And it goes to what I was saying before about the lactic acid. And sometimes you need 45 to sort of get going and get your lungs going, get your second wind. Second half, Liverpool could have scored 6.
Dude, the first half, Liverpool 0.11 expected goals.
Because Ipswich went long, and that's why he took Kwanzaa off, because he didn't win enough duels. So he brought Konate on. So the game I expected, to be honest. Gab, Real Madrid were held away to Mallorca, and Ferland Mendy gets sent off. Ridiculous tackle. How's it going for Ancelotti? What's he going to do with the front three? Rotation? Patience?
No, well, they need to find, he said it after the game. This is a game that they could have lost. I mean, he needs to do a couple things. So, first of all, set pieces. If you see the Murici goal, Mbappe should never be anywhere near Murici.
Nope.
And if he's on Murici, he should not just wander up the pitch when the ball comes in. Like, you need a better setup there. Beyond that, when he talks about balance, people talked about defensive balance.
Oh, so he wasn't talking. So he wasn't talking about the front three in terms of their positions.
I think he's talking about the front three because it's ridiculous. Vinicius plays on the left wing, fine. Mbappe plays centrally, but obviously gravitates to the left all the time because that's where he played most of his career.
Yeah.
So too does Rodrigo, supposed to be playing on the right. In fact, he scored a great goal, the opener, coming in from the left. Jude Bellingham plays on the left side of a midfield 3, and obviously he gets forward. I'm not saying this is unsustainable, but it takes time. And again, like, against most teams, they'll just beat them because they have better players. But it takes time, to find the right chemistry.
Yeah.
I'm going to be curious to see how much time he gives this setup, because I'm not sure having everybody wander over to the left is a good idea. Solutions, I think at some point you might have to sacrifice Rodrigo.
See, I think a tweaker system. I mean, it's very hard sitting here when you're trying to dismantle or trying to argue against Carlo Ancelotti, one of the best managers of all time. But when you look at the players, I half think if you played a 4-2 and then a 3-1, then you could accommodate those players who can drift a little bit more, because Valverde will do a lot of stuff out on the right-hand side.
Right.
But
so,
to play
4-3... But then you drop Rodrigo.
Yeah. Well, something has to be done. I mean,
I think that's one of the solutions, dropping Rodrigo. Maybe for Brahim Diaz or for Valverde in that role. He's hamstrung a little bit because there's Camavinga's injured right now as well, in terms of the two in front of the back four. I think, though, if there's one thing we know about Ancelotti, he's pragmatic. I think he's not going to be afraid to change it up. And I think these first games, this and the Super Cup, he wanted to let everybody see the shiny toys, Bellingham, Mbappe, Rodrigo, Vini. But I'll be surprised if all four stay on the pitch in this setup as the season progresses. This was way back on Friday, but a late Joshua Zirkzee goal gave Manchester United a 1-0 win over Fulham. He came on as a sub. Don, you saw plenty of him at Bologna last year. Is he the answer? And if so, to what question?
Good question, because he's not the answer to play a number 9, because he's not a number 9. He's openly said that. He said, I'm a 10, I'm a sort of 9.5. I like to come a little bit deeper. So I like what Ten Hag said. He said, you're going to have to learn how to play the 9 if you want to get in the team while Haaland's out. So as a young player, you've got to be adaptable. You've got to be versatile. It's not the hardest thing in the world, when fans go, oh, he's playing in a different position or someone else is playing there and you're now playing as a 6 or you're playing as an 8. Football's not the hardest game in the world. You can pick up positions quite quickly. And for someone like Zirkzee, who's a real talent, if you get him anywhere near the 18-yard box, but not like a number 9 where you draw a number 9 and you paint it on his back and you go, that's where you must stay. He's not that sort of player, but he got a great goal and a great debut coming off the bench and you're scoring a 1-0 win for Man United on your debut. Amazing.
I agree he has to play like Haaland when he's replacing Haaland. I agree with you also that people get lost in this debate, 9, 10, 9.5, whatever. Yeah. My concern a little bit, and I think he's a phenomenal talent, is that he's had, I think, 5 seasons as a pro, and there's really only been 2 where he's done well. Mm-hmm. And curiously, one was obviously last season under Thiago Motta, but not the first season under Thiago Motta. Remember, Arnautovic kept him on the bench. He only started 5 games. And the other one was he was on loan at Anderlecht, where his manager was...
Go on.
Vincent Kompany, who didn't want him back at Bayern this summer. So I don't know.
It's interesting. Very quickly, I was chatting to Andy Cole a couple of weeks back, and we were talking about his time at Man United. And he said, when I walked into Man United, I had people like Mark Hughes, and I had really top Brian McClare, I had really top pros around me. He said, I didn't settle too well, but they made me into a better player. So when you're someone like Zirkzee and you're someone like Haaland, who are still very young boys, it's almost like they need competition for places.
He's not a child anymore.
Haaland?
No.
Zirkzee. Yeah, no, but they're still relatively young in terms of you got to put on a Man United shirt and you got to be the best number 9, number 10, whatever. It's still a big shirt to pull on. Still young boys, relatively anyway. Leverkusen done it late again. 6-5 on pens. Were you impressed against Stuttgart?
I was impressed by Stuttgart. I was really impressed by Stuttgart. Sebastian Hoeneß in the summer, and by the way, the German Super Cup, it's not this sort of joke kind of glorified friendly. They take the game seriously. Stuttgart, they lose Ito, they lose Valdemar Anton, they lose their top scorer, Serhou Guirassy. Sebastian Hoeneß sticks around, and they hit the woodwork 3 times against Bayer Leverkusen. Leverkusen, who hung on to all their stars, as well as Xabi Alonso. Now, because it's Leverkusen, they get the late goal.
Ridiculous.
Never say die.
It's unbelievable.
They could have even won it in regular time. And then obviously they go through on penalties, and it's pretty remarkable. I think last season they scored 26 goals or something ridiculous like that after minute 86.
Madness.
So it bodes well for both teams. I'm excited for this Bundesliga. I am not counting out Stuttgart this year. And if Hoeneß gets it done just in the Bundesliga, just for top 4 finish, if he gets it done after losing so much talent, he's the real deal. Napoli get trounced by Verona 3-0, and Antonio Conte says he's ashamed and hopes the players are too.
Here we go.
Right reaction or over the top?
Here we go. The show's started already. Him and De Laurentiis, they're going to be at it. He said, they got mullered in the second half.
They were terrible.
And he said, we melted in the sun. But he meant snow, even though it was the summer. And he basically saying we capitulated. By the way, not my problem. Not my fault. It was all on the players. Typical Conte.
He said, I'm the coach, I have to take responsibility.
Yeah, I know. But this is supposed to be, for Napoli, this is supposed to be a very easy start. Verona, Bologna, Parma, Cagliari. And you get walloped 3-0, match day 1. That's not a good look.
It's the same team that won the title minus Kim and Osimhen. Osimhen's a whole other kettle of fish, the way the club are handling him. Apparently it has nothing to do with Conte. His obsession with Lukaku is unhealthy.
What was Crava's injury? Kvaratskhelia?
He came off. I think he had a knock.
Just a knock.
At the end of the first half. There was no Buongiorno at the back. But again, people are like, but without Buongiorno. Buongiorno just arrived. He's a good defender. Maybe the back 3 is just asks a lot of Lobotka and Anguissa in the middle.
Anguissa done okay, actually.
But
he done all right. But that's a shocker for Conte. That's a bad one. Milan, they needed to come back. 2 late goals to avoid defeat at home to Torino. Zapata was brilliant, by the way. Not the debut Fonseca was hoping for, Gab.
No, and look, I think he came out and he said, well, I wanted to play the players who were fit, who've been through training, not the guys who just come in, which is why Morata was on the bench, Theo Hernandez on the bench, Reinders on the bench.
Salamakers didn't work at left back.
But yeah, Salamakers at left back seems like a bit like a flight of fancy. Pulisic, I think, played with a knock. I don't think he was fully fit.
Right.
it's suboptimal, but you can look at the bright side and say, hey, look, they came back and they...
An Inter drew.
They got the point. We'll get to Inter. Newcastle win their opener against Southampton 1-0. Thank you, Joe Linton. Don, I got to get you on Fabian Schär and that nasty mean Ben Brereton Diaz.
He got absolutely sucked in. Joe Linton was man of the match by a million miles, but Schär's been sucked in like you wouldn't believe. Ridiculous.
Good idea to wait for him in the tunnel, too.
Bayern won 4-0 on Friday night, Gab. How did they look?
This was against Ulm in the German Cup, the Pokal. I thought they looked okay. Kimmich was in midfield. Kane came on and scored. Needs to find his full fitness. Leon Goretzka's reportedly been told that he can go. I think this was in the cards, but it is one of those subjects of the day. All these players unwanted and clubs trying to move them on. He wants to stay, obviously. Let's talk about your old club, Everton. Or one of your many old clubs, I should say. They lose 3-0 at home to Brighton. But Sean Dyche is absolutely furious over that Dominic Calvert-Lewin Lewis dunk decision, which apparently Simon Hooper reviewed on a monitor only he could see.
Yeah, there was a backup monitor. Just the fans in the stadium and the public couldn't see it, but there was. We proved it on PLP last night.
Did you get pictures of it?
Yeah, we did actually. Yeah, Chris Foy was on there and he saw it. It was just behind one of the hoardings. But anyway, the penalty was never a penalty.
Did Sean Dyche know it was there?
Probably not, no. But it was never a penalty. It was a great use of VAR because the two angles that you got, you saw Lewis Dunk diving in because he was panicking big time. You're going, that's a penalty. The next angle, that's a penalty. The third angle, Dominic Calvert-Lewin was putting out his right foot to try and get set to take the shot, and he put his foot or his studs on top of Lewis Dunk. So actually, it wasn't a penalty. It was, if anything, an infringement from Calvert-Lewin. But inside a stadium, it would have looked like a penalty. But take that aside, Gab. Take that aside. Even if it had been given, and it would have been 1-1, Brighton would have won 5-1 anyway.
Translated from the Dychian. So, I'm sorry, did Sean Dyche not see the special replay, which only Simon Hooper could see?
Probably not, no. Because he would have been in his technical
And he doesn't no.
But he wouldn't have seen the three angles.
No, this is what gets me, right? You're talking after, it's the oldest thing in the book, right?
Yeah.
After the game, rather than talking about how much your team struggled.
His bias eyes, he's probably thinking that's a penalty. Lewis Dunk has caught Calvert-Lewin.
Surely he must have some servant who's deputized
Gabby,
to go and look at the camera.
How many times
and say, Gaffer, don't make a big deal out of this. No. Unless you want to deflect and you want to talk about this.
Exactly. The deflection is your team and your tactics were absolutely horrendous. You didn't like his
tactics, did you?
No, because you're coming up against the Brighton side who dismantled them. It was almost like watching a long ball Wimbledon team play against peak Liverpool or peak Arsenal, peak Man City, and they bopped them off the pitch. It was so sort of 80s, 90s Wimbledon long ball tactic. It didn't work. And Evertonians come away from the stadium thinking, why is Morpay on the bench? Why is Mason Holgate on the bench? How's a 39-year-old Ashley Young starting at right back who got sent off? I was optimistic before the game. I was thinking, Matchday 1, Goodison, we can beat these. My God, Gab, I couldn't have been more wrong. Brighton absolutely, they toyed with Everton. And that's a massive problem on Matchday 1 at home.
James Milner played for Brighton. Who's older, Milner or Young?
That's a good question. I want to say Milner.
Somebody made his debut first.
I want to say Milner, but I could be wrong. Anyway, it was awful. Gab, so Pochettino's going to be the new US coach, based in Europe, not America. Good idea? Bad idea?
Some people think it's a really bad idea because they talk about how
I tend to agree.
He needs to understand the American vibe and the American
I think I tend
culture.
to agree. Why wouldn't you immerse yourself there?
Because I think Pochettino would say most of the players I'm going to watch are in Europe. So if I'm going to watch these guys in person, I'm better off being in Europe.
Fair argument.
I don't know. It's a tough one. I don't know to what degree it moves the needle. But I do think that...
Haven't you got more chance of watching more MLS games out there and potentially seeing younger players if you're based there?
I think the vast majority of the players are based in Europe.
I know, but the younger players that are not based in Europe are going to be playing in the MLS.
If they're in MLS, the thinking is they shouldn't be playing for the U.S. men's national team.
That's controversial.
Well, no, but it's what we saw. I mean, they played a team entirely without MLS players, right? They've done that repeatedly. I don't think it's that big a deal. I mean, realistically, you would hope if he works hard, and he is a hard worker, he's going to end up splitting his time between Europe and the U.S. I think it's important when he's in the U.S., he talks to MLS, he starts getting the U.S. culture. It is a kind of a delicate
you can see,
thing.
you can half picture, can't you? Poch losing a couple of games and everyone going, he doesn't live over here. He's not immersed himself in the culture. Doesn't live in America.
I mean, I think
half-hearted.
Klinsmann, who I think was splitting his time or whatever when he was in charge many years ago, he got some stick before of it. It's just like another obstacle. Equally, the man has a family and whatever. I can also understand that. His main job is to work and see this. I think you can make it work. I don't think it's that big a deal. Another one of your old clubs, West Ham United, fall to Aston Villa at home in the Basque manager derby between Julian Lopetegui and Unai Emery. Don?
Not great from West Ham first half. A club that's made a lot of good signings, 8 signings in the summer. Kilman, good signing. They've made strides in signing centre-backs, trying to improve that midfield. Bought some really good players, but they were completely outplayed. I thought Aston Villa could have been 3 or 4 up at half-time. And second half, he obviously give them a team talk and tweaked 1 or 2 things and made 1 or 2 subs. In the second half, they were a little bit better. But on the balance of play, I thought Villa were very good.
Are Villa better than last season? Can they be better than last season?
It's a great question, though, because very quickly, and I hate talking PSR, but they lost Douglas Luiz to Juve, and they took 2 boys in Berenechea and Inning Jr., who I don't think will play for Villa. So I think they are just sort of balancing the book signings. So I think, from my mind's eye, I think
they also got Tiny Tim Ireb. And then they lost Tiny Tim as well. Yeah. Just a huge... Oh, just kidding.
Onana was man of the match. Everton fans weren't too displeased when he moved on because he wasn't great for Everton, but he ran the show for Villa.
Onana's a really good player.
He wasn't at Everton. I promise you. If you asked Everton fans who would you rather lose for big money, Onana or Pickford, they were very much in favour of moving Onana on because they love Pickford.
Funny they should pick Pickford. What if you asked Onana or Doucouré?
Well, Onana couldn't get in the team towards the end of last season. Didn't play.
I think Onana.
I think it was good money for him, but to be fair, he ran the show. He was superb.
I think he's a very good player. I think Ealing Jr. may have his moments as like
that's what I mean.
The 3rd or 4th. I don't think he's there to be a starter. Bernat obviously was a guy that they threw into the mix.
They've got to keep Duran because Ollie Watkins didn't play well. But
what I'm saying is they've kind of kept everybody else who was important. I mean, sorry, Zaniolo, if you're watching. Did you know what I mean? Oh, yeah. Diaby.
Moved on to Saudi.
That maybe, I know by the end he wasn't a starter, but he is a player and a half, right? So
I think it's a little bit like the conversation we had before when we were talking Arsenal catching Man City up because of the signs that Arsenal have made and City not making too many. I think it's a little bit the same with Villa where you get into the top 4, you get into the Champions League. We saw Newcastle struggles when they were in the Champions League and trying to accommodate all the domestic football in Champions League. I think Villa will be the same this season as Newcastle. I think they'll play a lot of Champions League games. I don't think they'll go deep. And I think it might hurt them. I don't fancy them for top 4. Not because they're a bad side, just trying to juggle all the competitions that they're playing with a slightly weakened squad. De Zerbi's men destroyed Brest 5-1. Greenwood scored a couple of goals. Were you impressed, Gab?
De Zerbi and Marseille.
Marseille.
You mentioned Olympique Marseille. You're disrespecting
Sorry.
Le Vélodrome.
Well, I think everyone knows De Zerbi Marseille.
They spent some money in the summer. On paper, they are the biggest threat to Paris Saint-Germain, if there is a threat in Ligue 1. Greenwood did well. I don't like De Zerbi saying that his performances can end the controversy surrounding him. It's got nothing to do with football. It's not like, oh, look, he's a great footballer. Let's forget what happened before. I think this is going to follow him because of the way the charges were dropped. He's not had a chance to kind of give his side of the story, to clear his name, to assume he can clear his name, to even apologize or acknowledge what happened. So he's stuck, and I don't think it's very clever of De Zerbi, who I really like.
Was he not just asked the question and he was trying to say, like at some point we've got to try and talk about the lads' football? Was it lost in translation a little bit, or?
I'd then just say, like I'm here to talk about Greenwood, the footballer, and he did well for us. And is training well or whatever.
Yeah.
Brentford beat Crystal Palace 2-1, but there's no Ivan Toney as he's been linked to a move to Al Ahly in Saudi Arabia. So too apparently is Ademola Lookman, who was missing out on Atalanta's trip to Lecce Monday night, supposedly because he didn't want to go. Yeah. Joe Gomez, you'll be surprised to hear, although I think the Lookman thing, he's also been linked to Paris Saint-Germain.
I've seen that.
Slightly more appealing to him than Saudi,
I think so.
maybe?
I think so.
Joe Gomez, you'll be surprised to hear, has not been linked to Al Ahly, even though you really like him, apparently.
I did.
As far as we know. But he was left out of Liverpool's trip, as supposedly, obviously, he's going to be in as well. We've spoken of Osimhen. He's frozen out because they want to sell him for a lot of money, although every day that passes is tougher and tougher.
Yeah.
Lukaku and Sterling, we've touched upon. Don, you've been there, not once, but twice.
Mm-hmm.
Can you explain this from a player's perspective?
What, in terms
of West Ham and Everton?
What, in terms of forcing a move or being sort of left out of the squad?
Being left out of the squad.
I've been there twice, like you said. Walter Smith was the manager at Everton, and I wasn't signing a new contract. I was one of the lowest paid players at the club. I was captain of the football club, and Walter had brought about 4 or 5 really big name players in who were on huge money, and I was way behind, and he wanted me to sign a contract that was nowhere near at the level of what I thought a little bit closer to the bigger boys.
How much time did you have left on your contract?
6 months. So I wasn't sort of saying I'll go in a free because that wasn't sort of my style. And I wanted to sign for Everton. I wanted to stay. But the fact they couldn't get anywhere near the likes of John Collins, Olivier Dacour, Kevin Campbell, Duncan Ferguson, the list goes on and on and on. And being the lowest paid player and the captain, I felt as though I deserved
so what did he tell you?
He said
you're
to
no
me,
longer training with the first
He
team?
said you got 2 options. He said you can train with the kids at 10:30 at the training ground, not Belfield, the kids' training ground, or you can train at 1:30 when the first team have gone, and you'll train on your own. And I said, I'm not training with the kids. I'll train at Belfield when everyone's gone. So I'd done about a month and a half on my own at 1:30. Trained hard because I knew they'd be watching. Walter got loads of injuries, got me back in the squad, scored against Leicester, and then that was me back into the team.
And did you sign a new contract?
No,
again?
I went to Sunderland.
On a free transfer?
I wasn't on a free. I got signed because I don't believe it was Windows back then. So
right.
I think I signed with about 6 months to go, or 7 months ago, whatever the number was.
You could have spoken to your union rep about this.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Listen.
And at West Ham?
West Ham was a different story. I had a year and a half, 2 years left on my contract. We got relegated. The club needed to sell players on, take bigger wages off the wage bill. Unfortunately for them and me, I was going through a divorce at the time, and they wanted me to leave and give up my last 2 years of wages. And I went, I'm really sorry. I love you. I love the football club. I love everything, but I'm not moving because I need the money because I'm going to have to pay the ex-wife some money. I'm really sorry. Go and get someone else to take the move. I can't move. I need the money. So a bit personal.
So that was more...
That was very personal.
But did they then say, okay, fine, then you're not playing?
No, they didn't. They went the other way. They thought, right, we're going to either bin him or use him as an asset because we still think he's an okay footballer, and we'll allow him to play. I mean, very kind, but
you played, and West Ham did great, and they got promoted, right?
Yeah, we done all right. Yeah, got promoted. But it's all bizarre stuff and scenes that go on. People think these are like one-offs. They've been happening like forever. It's just how they get reported and how players
You know what
deal
it
with
is,
stuff.
though?
It's like Osimhen's a little bit unlucky because he's valued at over 100 million, but there's not a market for him in today's with PSR.
Well, that's his release clause.
Yeah,
but this is what gets me.
But who can pay 100 million for him? Who can pay 100 million for him?
You don't need to pay 100 million for him.
But Napoli value him at 100 million.
Yeah, no, but they don't really because they're counting on him to leave, and they know they're going to have to take less than 100 million. What happened with Osimhen is he had a year left on his contract, so to preserve his transfer value, they got him to extend his deal and gave him a raise. Mm-hmm. But they only extended it by 1 year, and they put this clause in thinking like, aha, somebody's going to come in for him.
Yeah,
I think somebody will, but if I'm Paris Saint-Germain, I just sit there. I just wait for the clock to tick down.
Oh, yeah.
And then I come in and I offer 50 million or whatever. By that point, Conte will have ripped all his fake hair out.
Lukaku will be in.
But it's...
it's a standard poker move. You want 100 million, someone bids 50, you'll settle on 60, 75.
I used to be 100%... I used to be against sort of closing the window sooner. Closing the window before the league starts.
I am 100% in agreement with that. I think the window should be shut when you start match day 1.
It's difficult because leagues traditionally have started in different times, but honestly,
but then the Germans get another week. Whoever starts a week late, that's just another week.
Well, there used to be much bigger variants before. Like France would start in late July and whatever, and in Spain would start in late August. But given that doesn't really happen anymore, even though it'll start around the same time, I'd love it if the leagues came together and says, all right, we're going to have a registration deadline. After this date, you can only sell players. I don't know. it just bugs me. So many great players, not just them, it's Koop Miners we're going to talk about later, not playing because of this.
Well, on Koop Miners, I mean, he's reportedly trying to push for a move to Juve for 55, 60 million over 4 years.
Pushing, he's refusing to train or play. This has been going on kind of all year with him.
Is he that good, by the way? 60 million? I know he's decent, but 60 million?
He's pretty darn good. But yeah, I mean, he's coming off an injury, of course, which kept him out of the Euros as well. Juve, Atalanta value him at 60 million. Juve have offered a package which reported is 55 million, but it's like 50 million now, and then some more money later, and then some more money later, for accounting reasons and whatever. Atalanta have said, well, we'll see. In the meantime, they've effectively signed his replacement and getting some margins.
I never agree the player should never not play, though. The player should never down tools, even though you're trying to force a move.
It's pretty bad when you do that.
It's awful.
It's really bad
It's awful, I think. And I think that half tells you about the character. If you're buying that player, I mean, I know it's a pretty selfish world we live in.
The thing is, in 2 years' time, when Man City want Koop Miners,
I know.
Is he going to do that to force a move?
I know.
Yeah, no, that's what
it's a selfish world we live in.
Look, it's a crappy situation. Juve need to. I mean, they've already made some signings. They need to sort things out. They need to figure out what they're going to do with Federico Chiesa as well.
Where do you sense he might move?
He's out of the squad. So, and they're dumping everything on Motta. Motta says he doesn't fit his scheme. So I'm like, it doesn't mean Motta wants him out of the squad entirely. I think it's humiliating for Chiesa. And again, if this guy's not playing, who's going to want to sign him?
Don't know.
So I
mean, there's the reports at Newcastle, and I wouldn't swap him for Anthony Gordon on the left-hand side.
Maybe you can
maybe right side.
Sell Gordon. I don't know.
I wouldn't sell Gordon for no chance.
Roma are held to a scoreless draw at Cagliari, and Paulo Dybala only plays the last 20 minutes. Supposedly, there's a big money offer from him in the works from the Gulf, Don. This has been going on for the past month. Fali Ramadani, the agent, is working on it. He's a big, powerful agent. Presumably, he's not just there wasting everybody's time. They asked De Rossi, how big a problem, how big a loss would his departure be? And he said, it would be a big blow if we don't find a replacement. If he leaves, we don't find a replacement.
That's it. That's the key. Got to find a replacement. Because Dybala makes the game look very easy at times, very technical. Never been the quickest, but the sharpest of football brains. And at 30, it feels as though you look at the number on paper and you think that's relatively young. But at the same time, there's a lot of miles in those 30 years in terms of how many games he's played, top-class games, how many injuries he's actually had in the last 5 or 6 seasons. So if they do get a big offer, it wouldn't surprise me if they moved him on as long as they find a replacement.
They signed him on a free transfer, so obviously it's one of those pure profit situations.
Yeah.
I maybe let him go, maybe bring in a winger for Dobek. I don't know. I'm so skeptical about the Saudi Gulf money train.
Right.
Just because this summer is proving to be so different from last summer when they chucked all the money in early and whatever. And now are the Saudis saying, ooh, let's wait until the end of the transfer window so that we can get bargains? I thought they wanted to get the guys in, to get them acclimated as soon as the season starts. I don't know.
Gab, let's talk Ilkay Gundogan. In Barcelona, they're reporting that he didn't play against Valencia because he wants to join Jose Mourinho's Fenerbahce in a 2-2 draw. In an ill-tempered game. In a very ill-tempered game. Is that the way you saw it?
There's different levels to this. So, first of all, on Ilkay Gundogan, Sport is a newspaper in Barcelona. They reported that the reason he didn't play against Valencia was because he too was trying to force through a move to Fenerbahce.
It doesn't feel like Gundogan's way, does it?
Well, especially
goes
when
against his character that little
the
bit.
whole song and dance about getting Hansi Flick in, right?
Yeah.
I think it totally goes against his character.
Yeah.
I could see him maybe wanting to move to Turkey since the guy obviously grew up German, but he also feels very much Turkish as well. But if you're going to do that, you need to sort this stuff out earlier. I mean, Mourinho was appointed, 6 weeks ago, or even longer than that. You knew that he's going there, so it's an odd one. I also wonder to some degree, are Barcelona trying to kind of push him out the door? They're like, oh, look, we've got the marks now. And
you went like that. The first thing I thought of was levers when you were pushing the little...
Well...
Is this another little lever that...
Gundogan's not getting any younger. If they get a fee for him, it would be pure profit since he was a...
And they've got Olmo in.
they've got Olmo in. I don't know. On Fenerbahce, obviously, they were knocked out of the Champions League qualifiers. They drew 2-2 with Göztepe, which must be, which obviously would have been disappointing for them. Really ugly at the end, where their president, Ali Koç, is walking around the pitch, and people are throwing all sorts of missiles, and you see him just get hit in the head by a bottle thrown by the fans. Not sure if he was being targeted or they're just throwing it at a lump of people or getting their jollies that way. This has to stop. This is just, I mean, I'm speaking the obvious, but you can't say it enough times, obviously. Yeah. On Gundogan, I think this story will evolve in the next few days. I think he's going to come out. Somebody's going to come out and deny this story. But you do kind of wonder, though, if this might be a solution that suits everybody. You know, if Gundogan does want a different experience, if Barcelona say, we need to do this so that we can register Dani Olmo. Phil Jones has announced his retirement from football. Don, I didn't think of few players who have taken as much abuse as he has over the years, and we've done it, Jules and I. He made a ton of money. I don't feel sorry for the guy. He's had injuries, bad injuries as well. Yeah. When he's been bad, he looked really, really bad, which I guess is part of the reason people made fun of him, would never leave United, whatever. But now he's come to terms with the fact that he's not going to play again. Yeah. Can you just talk a little bit about that? How, and is it, you must have had teammates who were super hyped and thought were really, really good when they were very, very young. And when they came through at Blackburn, people got all excited. It didn't work out for him. And they take abuse more so than somebody else. Yeah. I mean, how do you see that from the player's perspective?
Yeah, I mean, it's the modern culture that we live in. It's social media. You make a mistake these days, and you can rewind any amount of decades, and you'll see every player.
So it's not modern. It's always been like this.
Yeah, it's always been like that. But what I'm saying is, the modern culture is, if you make one mistake and you get nutmegged and you fall over, it's a meme all over social media for the next 3 weeks or longer. Harry Maguire's probably suffering a little bit of that over the last 18 months as well. So he can stick his hand up and go, hang on a minute, I know exactly what he's going through. So yeah, I mean, I think part of the problem was, I can't remember which manager said it. You might be able to remember once I say it. And I think some manager likened him to like a Rio Ferdinand. Someone said, he's amazing, he's better than Rio or someone like that, and it puts pressure on him.
Thanks.
Was it? Yeah, exactly. I don't know if it was Josie. I can't remember who it was. But yeah, I mean, he's had a good career. He was blighted by so many injuries. And I remember quite a few games for Man United where he was missing for something like 3 or 4 months for a bad injury, and he was training really hard. And they were so desperate for a body, they'd put him in. So no time to sort of recover. Right. In my day, you might play like an hour in the reserves, or like a 45 in the reserves, first game back, then second game back, an hour in the reserves, 90 minutes in the reserves, then you go into the first team. This guy was just sort of shoehorned into the first team against like top Premier League players. And it's like, in the end, it was awful to watch. I hate seeing players struggle. And I think he was one of them where once the dust settles, he'll look back and go, do you know what? I had a really good career. I played at Man United for a lot of years. Like you said, earned a lot of money, comfortable. It's not as bad. It's never as bad as what you think. No, I've had shocker games. I've had horrendous games. And I've looked back, and when I've done them for Premier League football on a watch-along, I remember a 4-4 game against Charlton for West Ham, and I was horrendous. Got took after an hour. Wherever I ran, the ball was in the opposite direction. So I'd run over there, and the ball was over there, and I got subbed off now and there. And I seen it back again about a year later, and I thought, it's actually not as bad as what I remember. And I think Phil Jones will probably feel the same way. He'll probably think...
What I find interesting about him is, it's one thing, all right, Hutchison plays badly, so I'm going to call him rubbish, I'm going to call him lazy, I'm going to call him stupid, whatever, right? Yeah. Phil Jones got personally mocked.
I know.
And made fun of. Did you ever experience that, or did you just get called lazy and rubbish? Like people actually.
No, I don't think people were as brutal. I think
it's
in a
the
sense,
ridicule. I think with Jones, it's not just like Jones, you're terrible, or Jones, you're a bad person.
No, but now
it's just Jones, you're a joke.
Yeah, but now it lasts forever, doesn't it? Because of the memes. You know, you can go. You'd struggle to find footage of me playing for Hartlepool in 1989 and see you'd see horrendous mistakes.
And do you think it's going to affect him? I mean, he says he wants to get his coaching badges.
No, time's a good healer.
But the thing is, if you had like a 16-year-old who plays football and Phil Jones is a coach, you don't think the guy's going to go and
I don't think
find YouTube clips and Well,
if they do, they're stupid. And if they do, if they do that and they look online and see Phil Jones falling over and they go, oh, what we're doing getting coached by him, I think they need a good looking into.
You'd be having none. No, I completely agree.
Yeah, I think it's a scandal. Gab, so Nice lost to Auxerre on the opening day, but Gab, I want to speak to you about Dante. Dante's still playing at 42. How?
He looks after himself. What can I say? It's also, I mean, I think it's also French league because I think they had was it Hilton who played like I think until 44. I think he's still there. The hair might not be quite as thick as it once was.
Has he not got the big Buffon he had at Bayern?
He's producing and he's helping the people around. He's better than them. And what I loved is he's like, well, I'm going to retire after 26 World Cup. So, I don't know if he said it as a joke, but like, dude, you haven't played for Brazil in more than 10 years. Like, it's not like I'm going to retire after 26 World Cup because
he's going to be playing at 46.
No, but the point is he's not going to play in the 20. I mean, presumably, right? Since he hasn't played for his country in 10 years. So it's one of those funny things. Maybe he wants to stay in contention for the. I don't know, but
I think fair play to him if he's fit at 42 and he,
But to be honest, like he is a model of professionalism and how to take care of yourself. Don, you love your Saudi football. Cristiano Ronaldo puts Al Nassr a goal up in the Saudi Super Cup final against El Hilal, who then stormed back to score 4 goals in 17 minutes of the second half. Now, Cristiano wasn't happy. He gestures as if his teammates were sleeping and stormed off without collecting his coveted Super Cup runners-up medal. You okay with this?
Nah.
He wants to win so badly?
Yeah, I get that, but I'm not a fan. Just take your medal. It's not just him. I think it's become a trend, hasn't it, the last sort of 10 years when you get beaten in the final. It's like, I think I saw Michael Olise in the Olympics. He took his silver medal off. And it was like, everyone was going, oh, look at him. He's a winner. He doesn't even want the silver medal around his neck. And look at Ronaldo. He's took his medal off. He doesn't even want to be... What a load of rubbish. Just wear the medal. Be graceful. I know in the heat of the battle he's a winner and we all get upset when we lose a game and you score and you think you're going to win, you're going to be the hero. In the end, you get trounced and it looks a bit bad. But it's just a trend that's unnecessary, isn't it? Just keep your medal on, man.
It started before that. Jose Mourinho did it like 20
No,
years
that's what I'm saying. It was like, 20 years ago then. But
I do think, listen, I understand you.
But I think people get sucked in, the media, and I think fans get sucked in by, oh, look at him taking his silver medal off because he doesn't want to wear a loser. It's rubbish, man.
I think some respect to the people who were paying you hundreds of millions a year would probably be a good idea. If then you want to go in the dressing room and rip your teammates a new ones and chuck it in the bin. Yeah. I'm totally cool with that.
Give it away to a fan if you want.
Or whatever. But in public, you need to do that. And this thing about making the sleeping sign towards you, those are fellow pros.
Yeah, it's not great. Gab, The Athletic spoke to a number of Premier League executives and several are calling for a very harsh punishment for Man City if they're found guilty over the 115 charges. One of them said... the punishment needs to be over 3 or 4 years. Another one's a 70 to 80 point penalty. Thoughts?
So the 70, 80 point penalty is just stupid. I don't understand that. If you penalize somebody 80 points, or they're going to get relegated.
It must be over a period of time.
No, I think it's once. It's fine. Relegate them. And by the way, this is all if they're found guilty before. Yeah. It depends. If they're found guilty, of what charges, to what degree are they found guilty. But if they are found guilty of everything they're accused of, is really, really bad. Yeah. And you need exemplary punishments, I think, at a minimum relegation, if they are found guilty. Also, some severe financial punishments towards not just the club, but I go after the owners, too, who've got interest beyond that. Because you're committing fraud here.
Fans would then say, what's the point in doing that against someone like Man City, who have got unlimited money? So maybe a transfer ban would be... better than a...
I think relegation would do a lot of damage already. But
I meant on top of that, yeah.
But I think it's pie in the sky. There's obviously an appetite to do it. But the thing is, these charges have to be proven effectively. And until that happens, which we might get a verdict in January maybe, this is going to hang in the air. And look, I think it's as Pep said.
Who seems pretty confident.
He doesn't know. He doesn't know one way or the other, right? He just trusts what he's been told. This has to be resolved because it's not fair. If they're guilty, it's not fair to everybody else. If they're not guilty, it's not fair to having this hangover city everywhere they go. Don, this brings us to an end. But thank you for joining us on this inaugural European Gab and Jules show of the European on Monday of the 2024-25 season. Yeah. Jules won't be back on Thursday. I believe we've got Robba, which is just like Jules, only with less hair. Yeah. Less hair, let's say. Until then, love the game, love your neighbor, love yourself.